you. 29 books I
Oh
found
my gosh, there you go.
from Wikipedia, which is not up to date. But anyway,
Okay, 29. You're prolific.
I am.
I can't get one out. Her novel.
You will be able to get one out after you're finished with me and David, because we're going to
Okay.
we're including some writing tips for everybody, parents, kids, everybody.
Fantastic. I'm glued. Her novel, What World Is Left, won the 2009 Quebec Writers Federation Award for children's and young adults literature. In 2014, her book, Hate Mail, won the same prize. Would you like to add anything to that, Monique?
Well, just the littlest thing, which is that Hate Mail is based on the story about a boy who has an autistic cousin. And it actually came out of a Blumet project, but that's a little bit related to my interest in the stuff we're talking about tonight.
And would you like to just tell us a little bit about how you got involved with Babar and what you do there?
Well, I guess as a writer in Montreal, if you write for kids, or if you're interested in writing for kids, like some of you who are listening tonight, again, whether you're a kid or an adult, you got to go to Babar, because that's where everybody knows everything. I rarely start a new book without talking to them at Babar and saying, what do you think of this one? Because they know what's cooking. So that's
okay.
That's my
good advice.
It is, I believe
that's all down to my wife,
Yeah.
Maya, who started Babar back in '86. So it
I
is
remember.
the 35th anniversary of Babar. And the 47th comes in between Maya and myself. I got into Babar kind of through marriage, and I helped Maya set it up and then started working for her and with her about 27, 28 years ago. So that's where I come into it.
Maya
and
started.
now our daughter's taking over, and she is just as knowledgeable as Maya, and our staff is always just fabulous. But I don't want to turn this whole thing into a big advertisement for Babar.
No, but I would like to mention that Maya used to bring books to children who didn't have any in third world countries.
Yes.
And that's how I believe that's how it started.
There's certainly, we've had outreach. That was the Suitcases for Africa project. And a lot of books went to Kenya, and a lot of kids have learned to read and furthered their education through those particular donations that were coordinated by Maya through Babar. So that's something that, yes, certainly was done in the past.
If it's okay, I'm going to hop in now, because something that, Pam, you didn't know about me, but I'll tell the others, is I teach at Marianopolis. It's my 35th year starting in 2 weeks. So now I'm putting on my teacher's hat. It's 8, and we've got you guys till 9. So enough chit chat. We're getting to work. All right. So David, we talked about doing a little, if it's okay, anybody else, any of the organizers say no, or you want us to talk about other stuff, but I think we got to move into our content. So yes. David, if we could each, I don't think we need more than 2 minutes to say a little bit why we're interested in the talk that we're doing tonight, which is basically about making reading a family-friendly, fun activity for everybody, including kids and families, adults, everybody, perhaps people who are struggling with learning difficulties in some way. So do you want to go first, and then I'll tie it up quickly with my stuff?
Sure. My friends at Pamela and everybody invited me to do a little presentation on reading, and the whole idea has morphed into these 2 webinars. We often see kids who have various problems, and they're various. It's wide. They're reluctant. They're problematical. There's the dyslexic, there's all I think everybody's aware of the various problems that each individual has. And we often see kids like that, but we often don't see the kids. We more often see the adults, the parents, who are sometimes just a little frustrated and sometimes beside themselves. So our interest is to share our passion for reading. It's a magical thing once you get into it. There are many doors into it. You can come to the store, you can go to your local library, you can go to your school library. There are resources out there like the MCLD. There's all the various librarians, by gum, they're terrific. There's blogs, there's cereal boxes, you know. You start where you want to start. And this for us, our passion has always been reading, and then any way we can get people interested in it is fine for us. It's not simply a question of selling more books. It's turning more people on to reading. That is the magic of the whole thing. How about you, Monique?
Oh, you're saying how about me? Good, because I'm like ready to jump
Yes.
in. I haven't taught a class since May, so I'm like, you're my first group. I'm dying to do this. Okay, so I have a few personal reasons that tie into my interest in what we're talking about tonight. I have a niece who is on the autism spectrum. So I've watched, and she's actually a teacher now at Mackay. So she's somebody who struggled a lot. And I have a lot of nieces and nephews. And this one, you know, sometimes we talk about this in the family. In many ways, she's the most successful because she's the hardest working. And she's a shining star. And she has struggled the whole time, but she's doing great. Okay, so that's one reason. I have other reasons. I go swimming at a pool, and I'm friends with all the lifeguards. Okay, it's a little pool in NDG. And one of the lifeguards is named Megan Kerr. And I've known her for years, and actually interviewed her for a book that I was researching. My book on feminism came out, I guess, last year or the year before. I don't know, David did the launch with me, but
that was a few years ago, Monique.
There you go. But I've known Megan for a long time. And it wasn't until I was doing the research for that book that she told me that she has a learning disability and that she's a spokesperson for you guys. So, and I've gotten to know her quite well. And last week I did we sat down, I said, just tell me a little bit more about how it was for you when you were a kid. So Megan told me that she could not read until she was in grade 3. And I have a note, she says, I felt like I was stupid. And it was only at that time, it wasn't until she got a diagnosis that her life changed. And she said she remembers, she was in grade 3, she got the diagnosis, and she said it was practically the next day that she read her first book, you know, slowly, carefully, but it's because knowing, and that was her advice also, like, get help. So kids need help. My niece was very lucky because she was like 2 when 2 by 4, she was getting a lot of support. Megan, it took longer. And Megan, I asked her, what advice do you have for kids and for parents supporting kids? And she said, ask for help and find your support system. So I know you guys are a support system, so this is important, but you need as many people on your team like we all do, because like David and I were saying, we've all got stronger abilities and weaker abilities, right? And then the last reason is a very personal reason, like in my life lately, is that just before COVID, I fell in love with a wonderful guy. He's super smart. He went to Harvard, okay? But we think he probably also had an undiagnosed learning disability. And his daughter, he has 5 kids, and the youngest girl was really struggling with reading. And I don't want to say I'm such an expert, but I'm like, you should get her checked. You should have this looked at. And she was diagnosed with a variety of things, including ADHD and dyslexia, a whole bunch of stuff that explains so much about why she hates to read. So she's been my personal little project because I love this kid now. And I'm not saying she's reading a ton, but some of the strategies we're going to talk about tonight are things that I've worked on with her. And the other irony, and it might be interesting for some of the parents, is my boyfriend. And by the way, he's like a neurologist and neuroscientist. He's listening to all this stuff. And he said, you know what, Monique? I never liked reading either. He's much better at listening. He loves hearing stories. And one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is, reading stories. What are the other ways of doing it? Because if we give this girl who's going into grade 11, not diagnosed till last year in grade 10, if we just give her a book, she'll never read it. But last week, because she loves cooking, last week there was a cookbook out, and I'll tell you, she was doing fine with the recipe, right? So it's like that's a big answer to what we're looking for. Is we have to make it fun, because just like Megan said, the lifeguard who I referred to before, reading for her made her feel stupid every time. So that's the beginning point. And in fact, David, I think this was our first question. After our talking about why we're interested in this, do you want to ask me the next question we kind of planned? Do you have it written down?
No, I didn't have that written down, but
it has to do, okay.
But the subjects.
Okay, it starts with the letter D for difficulties. Well,
yes.
We'll do it quickly, because we really want to get to is the fun stuff, right? The tips. And maybe you guys want to share tips too. So this could be in the chat. Oh, Megan is here tonight. I just got the message. Yay, yeah. Megan. I love Megan. She is so smart and so talented. And again, and a hero.
She's been sitting there looking like the cat who ate the canary all the way through.
I love her. Okay, so now I'm too excited to get my train of thought again. Okay, so the thing was difficulties. David and I said we did our like plan for today, and we're going to talk about why we're interested. Okay, we did that. Tick off the list. Next is, what are the difficulties that kids face, right? In this situation, we've begun to allude to them. I have a small list that I started. But basically it's Megan's point. The big difficulty is feeling stupid and feeling there's something wrong with you, as opposed to you need support, which you're not getting and even know you needed support, right? So some of the things kids have difficulty with, and you guys add to the chat, or, if it's really important, indicate, raise your hand, or you can talk during our talk, right? So understanding vocabulary, that can be hard for kids, right? So I've got a few tricks to share regarding that too. Staying focused. My boyfriend, the guy that went to Harvard, I'm sure he had to read some books to get out of Harvard, right? But he has a lot of trouble staying focused when he reads, okay? He doesn't when he's listening to a story. He's amazing, right? So staying focused while reading is difficult, and there's tricks for that. And again, at Marinopolis, we do have a center for kids with learning disabilities, but that it wasn't, when I started 35 years ago, we didn't have kids like that, and we didn't know about those kids at Marinopolis, right? Those were kids who and often the kids are super smart because they have to find ways, like a fish to keep swimming in the aquarium. So often they're super smart, and they've had to find ways to cope and to hide, right?
Just to interject for a bit, Monique, the last coach of the Canadians who won them the cup was Jacques Demers, and it came out a few years after 93, that he couldn't read, and he got himself together. He learned to read, a huge step to admit that, right. Certainly back in the day, and they made him a senator. So, there's a lot hiding in everybody.
That's right.
That can get easily shut down, especially small kids. They're sensitive. They get bullied. Other kids don't understand. Oh, you're in this, you're in the stupid class. You're in the bobo class. How many times has everybody heard that? And it's not just a joke. So, sorry. You go.
No, it's great. And what we want it to be like a back and forth. And also, I talk a lot, so don't let me talk too much. Okay. Another thing is that kids.
You say smart stuff.
Okay, good. Kids may have decided that reading isn't for them, just like my boyfriend's daughter, who just announces, I don't like to read. But me, because, okay, I was a different kind of kid. It was the only thing I really loved is stories, books, stories, words. I love it. You got someone speaking tonight who was like the converted already, like a religious reader kind of thing. Ah, here we go. Look at that book. I hate reading. What a cover. Do you
Yeah.
want to talk about that for a few minutes? Or
Sure.
you just want to read it? Up to you.
It's a funny little book because it starts off on this crazy thing, I hate reading. I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of a way is that to introduce a book? And then it goes on, you have to read for 20 minutes and you can feel so many people, so many young people saying, I have to read for 20 minutes. I had to do book reports when I was a kid, and I couldn't get a 4-line book report out for the life of me. There were tears and recriminations. It turned me off reading. I like this book. It was always the first line, and then it was about a dog, and that's why I like this book. It is just, that's just come back to me, and the wave of nausea that I had because of that. I mean, it was awful, and it was every week I had to read a book. I didn't mind the reading. I couldn't get the writing out. Reading wasn't my favorite thing.
They often go hand in hand, writing. But I think another thing, which it's on my list, because if it's okay, I'm going to start getting through some of the list stuff.
Sure, by all means.
Okay, so just because I have a list of tips, and I can even, if you like, type some in the message, in the thing for everybody. Hold on, let me get to everyone here. Okay, so one of the things is that picture books, like David just showed us a book that we call a picture book. It's full of illustrations. There aren't many words. Okay, so I'm just writing to you in the chat for everybody. You can save the chat. There's a way to do this afterwards. Okay, Roberta might be able to do it for us. So picture books are not just for little kids. Okay, I love picture books. Everyone at Babar loves them. I have I could show you, my office is like filled with picture books. Here's one that I love. It's an old one, but it's Beauty and the Beast. And it's a picture book version of it. The pictures are just good. Look, Beauty and the Beast. That's when he's a king. He becomes a handsome prince. But wait, I just have to show you this one. I'm going backwards. But the best picture, and I keep this one out, is she has a magic mirror. This is the original Beauty and the Beast story. It comes from it's a French fairy tale. And there's a magic, it's way better than Disney, by the way. Okay, the books with the pictures. Okay, so she's a magic mirror, and she looks in her mirror, and that's how she knows that Beast is not doing well without her at the magic castle. And I show this to my students because I think what this is about is like inner beast. Beauty is so beautiful on the outside, but when she looks in the mirror, she realizes she's not so perfect, right? Because she didn't love the Beast because he was ugly and a beast. So she has to be a better person too. Anyway, the thing about picture books is there's not that many words. They're gorgeous, and you can look at them, and you know what? I read them to the 63-year-old neurologist. Every weekend when we're together, he knows there's going to be a picture book in the weekend, and you can do it, and it can be a fun thing to do, and grown-ups can do it. I'm 61, I'm hooked on picture books. And just as a little aside, everyone thinks they're easy to write. They are the hardest thing to write, and they're the hardest thing to publish. And I'm very proud. I'll just allow myself to cluck for a moment. I have 29 published books. I have my first picture book coming out next spring. And it took me, my students laugh at me, it's 900 words. It took 5 years to write. And maybe next time, if you want, we can do like a 5-minute session on how to write a picture book, because I know about it because I worked 5 years. Okay. So
you can't be impatient when you're writing a book,
No.
right?
And
And certainly not when you're doing a picture book
and
or a
every
book for
word.
kids.
That's right. Every word counts in a picture book. And this idea of giving kids a manageable, if you say, oh, we're going to read the whole thing of Harry Potter, or we're going to read like a giant book, that's too much for kids.
Get the eye roll.
Exactly. And even when you said cereal box, that's good too. It's just paying attention to words. So David, are you okay with me rolling through a few tips?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I was just about to ask you what your tips would be. I
Okay.
know that, sure, you go
Okay.
right ahead.
So I'm going to go. Anybody want to jump in? David, if you want more of something else, tell us in the chat, or Roberta's watching. I think if people want to raise their hands and say something, or in the chat, if you go slow down or I'm bored or whatever. Okay, here's my tips, because now I'm like a teacher. Let me get through. I have 2 pages of tips, but I'll also, they're not long pages. They're like big writing. Okay, so one of the things is find books that are at the right level for your kids. There is no point reading a book that's like way too hard. They're only going to be frustrated, right? So the right level is very important. There's something called high-low, okay? High-low, I know a bit about, because one of the areas I've been working in, because it's a huge it's a huge strong seller in the market. So high-low stands for high interest, low language. Okay.
Low vocabulary.
Exactly.
Those are popular books, and
Very
a lot of people
popular.
get benefit from them.
And they are big sellers. I know, because I get my lists of what's selling, and my high-low titles are the best things that what's selling the most copies is high-low. They're usually bought for boys, but not always, because boys like reading. Generally speaking, boys are harder to get them into reading than girls are. So for high-low, many of them have, not all, but many have male characters. Okay. I'll just give a little plug for Orca, which is my publisher, one of my publishers, and Orca has 2 series called Currents and there's 3 series. There's Echoes, which are even younger. I've done for that too. Echoes, Currents, and the other one, Soundings.
Soundings.
Yeah. So those
I just wanted to say there, Monique, there's your levels, and there's also subject matter, which the high-lows have to do with, so that, again, it seems boys in particular are very sensitive to that kind of thing, and they don't want to read The Cat Sat on the Mat. They don't want to read, anything sissy or all the various things, and subject matter, even if it's in very low language level, at least they can walk around with a book that has something to do with what they like. And back to you.
Yeah, no, I just lost my thing to everybody. Hold on. I just have Pam.
The vagaries of Zoom.
Can you send me a message to everyone, Pam, so then I can just go back to my notes, because I'm having a hard time. Oh, here's everyone. Yeah, Megan, can you explain what you said? Okay, Megan's asking a bit more about high-low. So I'll just go through it quickly, because I want to get to the rest of my list. Okay, so high-low is like high interest. Okay, so like one of my the first book I second book I published is No More Pranks, and what made it high-low was it's like kids on a whale watching trip in Tadoussac, and a whale is going to be killed, and they got to do something. So that would be classified as high interest, right? It's not like a story about a grandmother and her recollections of her life. That's not what kids want to read about. So you give them something super interesting, right? Like there's that if you look at these kinds of books, sports that are considered high interest, but they're written in a fun way. Okay, so that's the high interest. The low vocabulary is you don't put in 18 letter words. They're fairly simple, and that's again gives a kid, like I've had letters from kids who say, yours is the first book I ever finished. I read a whole book. And that, I'm not saying I'm Shakespeare, but you know what? And aren't too many kids like that who would read Shakespeare. So I read my book. I'm very, very proud of that, right? So it's very important to give them stuff that they'll feel good with. Okay, I put in the thing, I wrote it to Pam. There's something that I read about that I thought was great. The 5-finger vocabulary test. Okay, I didn't make it up. I read about it and I took notes and said, this is great. I have to tell you guys. So you're reading to your kid. You say every time there's a new word, put your finger up. If they get to 5 in one page, it's the wrong book. Okay, so that's a good little thing. And also the idea, which leads for me to building vocabulary. So vocabulary, if it's like a test or like a school, a dictate, that's not fun, that's stressful. My mom, okay, whatever, hi mom, I hope she's listening. She died 4 years ago. My parents came from Holland, but my mom made me a storyteller and my mom made me a reader, and my mom loved words. And English was her third language. And she'd hear a word like, I don't know, scrumptious. She'd never heard scrumptious before. And she'd go to the dictionary, she'd look it up. And then she had a really annoying habit. She called everything scrumptious all day long. We're like, oh, it's so embarrassing, scrumptious, scrumptious. But you know what? She modeled for me someone who cares about language, someone who wants to learn words. And the best thing parents can do is model that for their kids. And not by saying, can you spell this word? Can you do it on your dictate? By showing that you yourself are interested. And you know, my genius boyfriend, he's not taken a bit of advice that I gave him. He should, because I'm smart in this way, even if I didn't go to Harvard. I told him, you know what you should do? Every night, you lie on the couch and read, even if he pretends to be reading. He models something for his kids that he enjoys.
What this book says.
Exactly. So you model that. It's a gift. And for me, I can tell you, and I tell this to my students, and I'm not joking, reading has saved my life and writing has saved my life. And I don't mean that I was going to jump off a high building and someone said, read this book, but I mean, here's a book for adults who can handle a bigger book. This is the best book I ever read in my whole life. I just finished it like 2 weeks ago, Girl, Woman, Other by Bernardine Evaristo. I could not be in a bad mood while I was reading this book. I'm in another world, okay? It won the Booker Prize in 2019 with Margaret Atwood. Just a plug for like a tough book, okay? But just to say, when I'm reading a book, I'm safe. Nobody, all the people who could be mad or upset with me or wanting things or just driving me a little crazy, forget them. I'm in my book. And by the way, I also have another prop to show you. Every morning I write in a book. Okay, I do 3 pages. Okay, I'm a bit of a kook with this. I'm going to move my computer to show you. Look how many of these I have. Can you see? That whole bookshelf, you're only seeing the top shelf. It's filled with those books. So I tell my students, you don't have to write 3 pages a day. And don't tell your kids, oh, I met Monique, you have to write 3 pages a day. Here's my little tip for you. 1 word a day. 1 word a day. Your kids can do that. You can do it with them. And I even have a little exercise that you can do. It's fun. I did it with my daughter when she was little. 1 word to describe how your day was. So today you go, I don't know, fun, stressful. How was your day today? And here's part 2. 1 word for how you want your tomorrow to be. And that teaches, first of all, builds vocabulary, because if they write fun, fun, fun every single day for 5 days, you could say, let's come up with some new words. Was it exciting? Was it scary? It's a way of building vocabulary. But that thing about how do you want tomorrow to be is actually very deep, because that's getting kids to think about taking control of their own lives. That you make a plan. If your day today was stressful and you need tomorrow to be calmer, just by thinking that, just by writing that word, calmer, it increases the chances that you'll have that kind of day tomorrow. Okay, I'm continuing, okay, because I'm not even, I forgot my list for a bit. Okay, so build vocabulary, make a list of words, of new words. And again, don't make it like a test, make it fun. Maybe get a scrapbook, write down the words, alphabetical, non-alphabetical, let them make pictures, anything to make words fun. Also, just pay attention to words. My mom really was interested, and it's a big word, etymology. Hold on, etymology. Interested in where words come from. So an easy one is like kindergarten. My mother spoke Dutch. So, and it actually comes from the German word kinderen in Dutch, but it's German. Also, little kids, a garden. And they had like that's how they began having kindergartens. It was like little kids grouped together and they called it kindergarten. Something that I just learned last week. I was like so excited. It's a French lesson, but nonetheless, I think you might find it interesting. The word dépanneur, which we all use, right? In Quebec, go to the DEP or the dépanneur. Well, it was my boyfriend who said to me something about a pan, like if you run out of gasoline, it's like a problem, right?
Pan de gaz.
Pan de gaz. So pan, I guess, is out of something. So to get you
Pan
out,
d'électricité.
yes. So to get you out of being out of something, right? If you're missing something, you go to a day, like which is you undo it. A day, like an anti-panneur, right? So
On
I
se
don't know.
dépanne.
Exactly. I didn't know your French was so good, David. But anyway, but I felt like so happy to learn this. So you might not be as kooky as me. Like, I really like words. But here's my little suggestion for parents: pretend you care, pretend you like words, start paying attention. You can look them up. You can Google, you can find it in 1 second now. We don't even need to open a dictionary. It's like a strange word. Where do you think that word came from? Right? I
And
don't know.
there's so many places you can look now. And it's so
every
easy.
single word. Like, I don't know why the word horizon just came to, I guess horizon is horizontal, right? It's flat, the horizon. So just thinking about this, talking about this with kids, it's a way to get them like, I still find etymology irresistibly interesting. Like the dépanneur was like one of my favorite things I learned last week. Okay, other things, pre-read. So before you introduce a book to a kid, you can pre-read the book with them. So look at the book. What does it look like? Look at the pictures. I personally, as a writer, I love reading all the thank yous and dedications and who's it dedicated to. Like, it's cool, the biography of the person. Look at the titles, look at the headings, look at the illustrations. Also, for kids, you can explain the key words before you get started. Like, I have a big interest in Holocaust literature. My mom was a Holocaust survivor. So if we're going to read, my picture book is a picture book about the Holocaust. And I have a beautiful one here. If I can't find it quickly, about the cat, Benjo. I'll look for it for next week. There are picture books about the Holocaust. So if you do a book like that with your kids, then it makes sense to talk about war, to talk about the Holocaust, talk about religion, if you want to. If you think, no, this is too much for your kid at the age of your child, don't do it. But if you think it's appropriate, you can introduce the concepts. Also, I mentioned before, different ways of looking at books and different kinds of books. If they like magazines, by all means, look at magazines. If they like comics, right? The comic section in the Saturday Gazette. The Gazette.
Comics are everywhere, and graphic novels have just taken over the world. And the pictures give context. Exactly. Just like picture books, they give context. They're into all sorts of levels again, all sorts of subject matter. So absolutely.
Yeah, and graphic novels didn't used to get a lot of respect in the world of literature. Now they're
that's for sure. We almost fought against them.
Exactly.
But now we see people love them.
Yeah. And I think I gave the example of a recipe book before, else I was talking about with David, but like a kid who doesn't like to read, like my boyfriend's daughter, but likes cooking. We had a cookbook out last week with a chocolate chip recipe in it, chocolate chip cookie. She didn't miss a word on that. Right. So it doesn't matter what they're reading. It just give them stuff that they like and take
the famous story of the kid. Oh, I can't read. Oh, I hate reading. But somebody happened to ask him about who won the baseball game, and he went off and he knew statistics about every pitcher in every team back to 1936.
Wow.
And this is interesting for him, and that is reading.
Yeah. And you know what? Also go to the bookstore. Like, well, I have another reference to Babar coming up, but stores, looking online at books. There's so many places to look for books. The library, go to the library. It's a wonderful.
Librarians are dying to help you.
Yeah.
Librarians are dying to help you. There's so good.
Yeah.
They know how to hook you in
Yeah.
and get you going.
And kids' books, like I was saying to one of my friends last week, whenever I start to research a topic that I'm, let's say as a journalist, I'm going to write about something. So always teaching a new course, I always start in the kids section of the library. Let someone explain it to me in a very basic way, and then I'm ready to roll. And I was going to say that, like when you were talking before about Babar's involvement in getting books to developing countries, we're so privileged that we have libraries, we have good libraries, we have interlibrary loan systems. We can get any book we want. There are countries like sub-Saharan Africa, they don't have books. They have old Dick and Jane from when we were kids. That's all they're giving to their students.
When I was a kid.
And me too. So, okay, so I have a few more things. I'm going to roll again. Ebooks, ebooks with audio. And these are very good. David and I were talking about this writer, Patricia Polacco. Again, I'm not sure if I already mentioned it to you today, or if it was in conversation with David earlier, but Patricia Polacco has a book that's on our suggested list, which we'll talk about at the end. And she herself, I can't find the title, but it was about
who is an author.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine she's been writing books for like ever.
And she herself was dyslexic, and she had a teacher who helped her a lot. And that picture book is about a girl named Trish, who is Patricia Polacco. So this idea that, and that book, when I looked it up today, it's available as an audiobook with some famous person reading it. So if that's a way to get kids interested, audiobooks, listen to the stories. Okay, reading aloud to a pet. I put that one on, I'll add it over here. This is for kids. I know from at Marinopolis, when I was a young teacher, I used to say when we talking about a story, everybody reads a paragraph. I stopped doing that quickly because I knew for some students it made them very stressed. So not everybody's comfortable reading out loud. Right? So we shouldn't push people, but it's still a useful skill. So a kid who's nervous about reading, and I know they had this program at the Eleanor London Library. That's why I know about the PET program. So had little kids that were a little bit nervous about reading, but they bring in some, like the nicest dog in Côte St. Luc gets the job or whatever, right? They're volunteers.
Reading dogs.
Yeah, but it's amazing, and you can try it, and you can go to a library and ask them if they could set up a program or find out if it exists near you. But otherwise, take the nicest dog, maybe you have such a dog, or your cousin's dog, your neighbor's dog, and let a child read to the dog. And don't make it like you got to read for 2 hours. Read for 5 minutes. Start short, right?
Animals, dogs in particular, are completely non-judgmental, which is what it's all about. And again,
exactly.
reading to somebody, reading to a dog, even reading to somebody is all about love.
Yeah, which handily ties into my next point that it's 2 points, but it's at the bottom of my list here on page 1, snuggle. Right? So that they say when we read to kids and get them interested in reading, it's about much more than intellectual things, right? It's about emotional things. It's about holding someone close, putting your arm around a kid. That's 100% to me as important as words on a page and the story. So, and let's say you're not like a super cuddly type, like my family in Holland. It's weird because in Holland, they're known for being very liberal about sex, but you know what? They're not big cuddlers in that country. If you visit, you'll see I'm right. So for me, that was something I wasn't really raised with a lot of physical affection, but it mattered to me a lot. And for me, that's something I really did a lot of that with my daughter. And I'm sure it was as good for me as it was for her, right? And she loves books. And I read aloud to her until she was, I think, 12 every night. And she's a big reader. Okay. So
and if you have problems yourself with reading, you can find everywhere various books, 1, 2, 3 words a page, and just look at the pictures together.
Yeah.
And discuss, or simply look at the pictures and describe them to a baby or somebody who's nonverbal. And then as it grows, you are in a position where you're encouraging a reading time. And then through help from you guys or from your local librarian or whoever you can find, again, like Monique said, with the your help network, it can grow from that, so that it's a simple action which becomes a habit, which becomes part of somebody's character. That's how these things develop very slowly.
So
Sorry, Monique.
no, don't say sorry.
Well-
It's good. It's good because it changes it up. They don't want to only hear from me. Okay. So and this ties into what you were saying, right? Talking about pictures, talking about other things you can talk about. You can ask even little kids about the characters in a story. What do you think about, Flopsy Bunny? What do you think about the grandma in a story? So do you have a feeling about that person? Do you like them? What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Just like we talk about real people. It's very good.
How are they like you? How are they
That's
not like you?
super to look
Bring
at
in
that.
something personal.
And also,
what you don't like about them.
exactly. And I like the connection to are you like that too, right? So even I'm always very interested, not just in someone who's totally perfect in a character. Doesn't interest me. I always tell my students, we don't want to read about someone that's boring, right? We want to hear about people that struggle. And you know what? For all of us, we do. But I think if you're working with a learning disability, the idea of reading about someone who's struggling, and in the end, what book isn't about a struggle? Because there aren't too many books about someone's perfect life, because that would be a most boring, hateful book.
Boringest book ever.
Yeah, exactly. So,
everybody has flaws.
Things. Yeah, and also, so I put down events and ideas, because books are full of ideas, right? What do we think about this idea? I have here my little, I love this, the Nutshell Library, and if we do have time, I might read you a bit of Pierre at the end. But the book Pierre, very small. I don't know if you know it. Every class I teach at Marinopolis, and these kids are 17 and 18, I read this little book. And the moral of Pierre is care. And whatever, if there's time, I might read you a page of it later, if there aren't enough questions. Okay, so this idea about discussing that, do you care about things? Do you care about school? Do you care about learning? A lot of kids, particular teenagers, will say, I don't care, right? That's such a teenage attitude. But what do you care about? That's a good question to discuss. And what I find is that stories lead to more stories, right? So if I tell you the story about the teenage girl who didn't know she had a learning disability, and now she found out and she's feeling more hopeful about her life, it reminds you of a story that you know of someone who also maybe managed. One story leads to another story. Okay, further on my list is go to the library, but we've already talked about that. Okay, another one, I really like this tip. Bring a book wherever you go. Okay. Today
That's why they thought up pocketbooks.
Exactly. Oh, that's cool. You gave me the fun of what I like. I have to add that in capital letters. That's where I never thought about the word pocketbook. Where did it come from?
That was when they popularized mass printing.
That's great.
The mass market book.
And it would go in your pocket. So if I see today, I admit that I went to get a manicure, and there was one young woman reading a book. And when I see someone reading a book, I'm like, what are you reading? Right? Also model that for your kids, that you got a book in your pocket, that you got a book in your backpack, wherever it is. You have time to kill. You're waiting in line at the drugstore for the long line for prescriptions. Take out your book, show them.
And the little if you've got little kids, they're the Anakin books, the little square jobs. What are they? They're
that big, eh?
This big. They're just little small ones. The paper bag princess, all the rest of those. And you whip them out, and something familiar, which is another thing about books. Read it again. If you've heard that, read it again.
Read it again. Yeah, that's it. That's interesting. I want to talk about that too.
Of the familiar.
Yeah. And if a kid wants the same story, that one of the assignments I give my class, it reminds me I should do it when school starts in 2 weeks. On the first day in English class, I ask them, what was the story that you wanted your parents to read you over and over again when you were a kid? Right. And usually, you know what I found, David, you might find this interesting. Usually the story, I ask them part 2, what does it show about the kind of person you are? Because it often indicates, right, the kind of story that you loved. Why? Like, okay, I'll tell you mine and it won't be hard to figure out. My favorite book when I was a little girl that I wanted over and over again was The Little Engine That Could. And I know David knows me, so he's laughing because I am. You don't see that how little I am. I'm 5'3", and I'm telling you, and David knows, I'm the little engine that could. Like if I get determined to do something, watch out, world! Like this engine's coming at you, right?
My mom was like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what if a kid wants a book over and over again, do not say, oh, I'm not going to read that book. No, you give them that book because it speaks to them. And you can, and maybe ask them, why do you love that book so much? Or you yourself try to figure it out. Okay, more things.
Sorry, excuse me, Monique and David. Megan has raised her hand. I think she has a question or comment.
Yeah, just about what you guys were just talking about. I was just discussing this with my mom, but when I was little, I loved the picture book, to go back to what Monique was talking about, of The Princess and the Pea. And I used to get her to read it to me all the time. And actually, I got her to read it to me so much that I had memorized the book. And I would sit there with the book and I would look through the pictures and I would know the story. And one day I went into my parents' room and I was like, look, I can read, but I couldn't. But I had memorized the story because I wanted to read so badly. And I loved the stories. I just wasn't able to read yet. But I remember that memory and it stuck with me because it was so great that I loved this story and my mom would read it to me without complaint every night. And it really made a difference in me wanting to read versus not wanting to read. When it was difficult, I wanted to be able to do that because I had been instilled with this love of it already.
And you know,
and did you see that as a setback? Sorry, Monique, did you see that as a setback when you found that in reality you couldn't read? Or did it simply encouraged you to be to push on in the reading thing?
Well, my mom would read to me almost every night until after I was able to read. My mom would read to me. She read the entirety of the Harry Potter series to my brother and I out loud. Nice. And it was like so much fun for us. That's some of my favorite memories from my childhood are running to bed as fast as we could so that my mom could read us more.
So that's what I said about love before. That
exactly.
It surrounds you. It's
it made something that I was scared of a fun activity. And so it wasn't really a setback because I still had that love of the story. And
it was more a prod even.
Yeah. To want to read more.
Encouragement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was going to just jump in to say that in my notes on Megan, I like seeing you write big on my screen, Megan, don't move. In my notes on Megan, I had written down, and I didn't tell you before, the first book that she read after she was able to read, and it was Franny K. Stein. So I want to give a shout out to that. And Megan, if just for a moment, I just want to tell them that Megan is a wonderful writer. And Megan, in like 30 seconds, tell them what you did yesterday with your favorite swimmer. What were we doing? Tell them, because it's so important for people to know. She's the ideal spokesperson to talk about, you know, developing a love for language. And I told you she's super talented. Tell them what we did for half an hour.
While Monique swam up and down her laps, I walked next to her with my laptop and we workshopped an essay that I'm hoping to submit to CBC's First Persons. And she helped me cull my essay, as it were.
Yeah, because it was 2,200 words and
Too
it's
long.
supposed to be 600. And she's like,
Love
oh,
it.
it's 1,800. I'm like, no, Megan, we're going to fix this thing. And you know what? I thought about it afterwards. I was a tough teacher with Megan, but she so gets it. And it's amazing to hear this story from her. Like, really, she's the thing you most need to remember from tonight. I mean, I hope some of our tips and stories are a bit useful, but it's Megan, because we can all overcome stuff and kids can, and then they can become like Megan. Okay, Megan, I'm very proud of you. I feel
It's about quality, not simply quantity.
Yeah. And her mom, you see how important her mom was, right? Like parents can make such a difference. Okay, I've got to give you a few more tips because it's almost 8:30 and we want to leave time for questions. And if there's no questions, well, we'll read you stories or talk about books. Okay, so reading buddies. We talked about dogs, but you could have different reading. Friends can be reading buddies. And when we give you our list, I think it's on the list that we have, but we can always, I have it separately too, websites where you can actually hear kids reading. Kids read to kids. I'm trying not to be reading your notes in the side yet, but it looks interesting. There's the one that David told me about today, 2 kids, I think they're from St. George's School, 2 grade 3 students reading. He can tell you the website. Or we
read to you. They're super cute kids.
Yeah, and I think it was we read to you like this. You could look that up, and that's those kinds of things. So buddies, you can even find them on the internet. Attend story times. Okay, so that would be, again, if you're not like Megan's mom, someone who's naturally going to read. So then to bring your kid to story time. Babar has amazing story times when it's not a pandemic, so it must be starting again.
Hopefully this fall, but you never know.
Exactly. We hope so. Public libraries. But in the meantime, even with the pandemic, this stuff is available online. You just have to look around for it. Here's my note on rereading. And what I mentioned here, so the same thing about if the kid wants the same book, say yes. And my notes are, it builds speed and accuracy. And this is what Megan was talking about, confidence. I know the story. I can predict the words. And it's very important for kids to be involved. And a lot of stories like fairy tales, like one of my favorites is The 3 Little Pigs, which I'll also be teaching in 2 weeks. And 3 Little Pigs, little kids can go, I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down. No, by the hair of my chinny chin. So letting kids be able to participate gives them a sense of mastery. They can be part of the story too. And that's what we want to give them. Okay, so set an example, which I said before, read during free time, praise effort. So you don't only have to praise results, what the mark you got on the dictee, that's not so important. No one's going to remember the mark they got on the dictee. I came from a family that placed way too much emphasis on marks. It's not so important. What's important is you did your best. Your kid is reading, you read for 5 minutes. That teenager who I'm growing to love, the 16-year-old girl, she needs to be praised. Hey, you read all the words. You were a great reader of that recipe. Just
the quality, not necessarily the quantity.
Quantity. Word games, and there's lots of these, tongue twisters, rhymes, songs, playing, they'll find a word, a Scrabble, although that I personally don't like Scrabble, but games with words. There's lots that we might be able to think of more together. Even like if you play something like charades, it is words also, right? Because you're trying to think of what the word is when you're doing the charade. The etymology, which I mentioned before, couple of final things, give books as gifts, right? Let kids see that a book is something people want to get, right? So give books as gifts. Ask for a book as a gift. Look at this book that I got, right? Can also be a reward. Kids have done well. Kids have been helping with chores. The reward can be a book. Exactly. You're saying this book, or it says the same thing?
This is just one of the books, but that's a book for somebody who doesn't like to read.
Exactly.
Here's others.
The book.
The
Oh,
one-
that's Book Buddies. I haven't
Book
seen
Buddies.
that one.
It's about they were given a little reading buddies, and one of them was afraid, and the other didn't want to be with the little kid, and the other guy thought everybody was going to make fun of him because he has a real problem reading. So these kids can relate to the characters and the problems they have, and it's nice, simple text. Let's see here. See, we're not dealing with a lot of words, right? And this, happens to be a series, and there's tons of them. And there's books for dyslexic kids you can give, which have actually colored pages, yellow or blue pages, gray pages, and the words tend to jump around a little less for dyslexic kids. So you give them something that's more focused.
Great. So
Onwards.
I don't have too much left in my tips, so I could have slowed down. I could have let you talk more. Now I realize, okay. The last one I have is, and it's sort of something we've been talking about already, and something that, because we're going to meet again in 2 weeks if you're going to come back, and then we're going to do more stuff on actual like exercises, things you can do with a story, both in terms of reading and writing, because they kind of work together. And that's why like Megan learned to read, got into reading, and then she got into writing. I read a beautiful thing last year. It said reading is inhaling and writing is exhaling. So you take it in and then you have your own way of letting it out when you write. So what I want to say about creativity, I really believe this is something that we so need, like all of us, and it doesn't have to be writing books. That maybe that's the thing for me. It's anything. It's cooking, making those cookies is creative. Planting a garden is creative. But there are things that you can do in terms of literacy that we're talking about tonight. One is make your own book, right? Do I have it here? A book that someone here, it was a present someone gave me. I've always kept it. It's on my desk. It's a little book. It's like a sewn together little book with pockets and so you can make books in a million different kinds of ways, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a book like we're used to in a library or a bookstore. You can make a family book. You can do a family story. You can make a book with your favorite joke. So model again, not just reading, but model writing, model that you pay attention to stories. Something that I'm super interested in is dreams. And remember I was saying, one story leads to another story, one dream leads to another dream. So if you've never done this, something fun at breakfast tomorrow, say, you remember any of your dreams? And just listen to them and learn, learn about people and what they share and what they're afraid of. And if someone tells you a dream, often what happens, you go, that reminds me of a dream I once had. And another thing,
make a conversation out of it.
Yeah. And connected to dreams is something else I'm super interested in, which is memories. And I'm actually reading another book, which is by this writer, Lisa de Genova, I think her name is, or Genova. It's for adults. It's nonfiction. And it's about how memory works, like the hippocampus and all the things that are going on in the brain. But so much writing is based on memory. And most people don't pay much attention to kids' memories. We're always asking like old people, what do you remember? But what do kids remember? And it's actually a really interesting thing to ask your kids. And maybe that can lead a memory of a vacation. Oh, while I'm on this, although I should save this for 2 weeks, the pandemic stories. That is going, you know what, just a quick thing on this topic. My publisher, Orca, when I talk to them, they're like, we don't think this, we don't really want to read pandemic stories because we think our young kids, they're reading our books, they don't want to read pandemic stories. The pandemic will be over and they want to forget that it ever happened. Don't even mention the pandemic, or if you mention it, just quickly on a certain page. But I was talking to, because I'm trying to talk to them, like some of the people there. And I said, you know what? I think you're wrong. But I don't think the best pandemic stories are coming like next year. I think it's our kids today that are going to be writing those pandemic stories in the future. So if you are parents, you get your kids to write their memories of the pandemic.
It's been a huge part of their life. You figure a 7-year-old has gone through nearly 2 years of, he was 5 when it started. That's going to be a very, very large part of their life.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take a lot of stories just sitting there speaking about it.
Yeah.
And to work through what I'm sure has been very traumatic for a lot of them. And I think that they're not perhaps aware of the trauma. And again, that's where you said you were so interested in vocabulary. And though just again, that one word a day, talking about the pandemic, there's a big word.
Yeah.
Everybody talks about it.
Yeah.
And you can get it into the kids' heads that it's a word that you can use, and how to spell it, how it looks, what it makes you feel.
Pan means come from everywhere. And then you could even think about, okay, pans, like a pan in the kitchen.
There's your etymology again.
Yeah, although I don't think pans in the kitchen have to do with pandemic, but you can, another thing which we didn't really talk about is playing with words, right? So what if you made a pan, what if you did and again, it could be a picture, and you can, doing things differently, like years ago.
And to get more fridge magnets.
Yes. Something that I did years ago was I did a drawing. I wish I still had it, but I lost it in a move. But it was like a self-portrait. But instead of, because you see I have crazy hair. So instead of like making a messy head of hair, I did it all with words. I made all my hair be words. And that suited the picture of me because I love words, right? So what if you do that with your kids, right? So there's different ways of using language. If they like drawing, well, let them draw their story. Right? If they like cooking, again, get them into cookbooks, find what they like. If they like cars or I don't know, whatever, building things, Legos, read up on Lego, get the Lego manual or how trucks work or whatever it is that
Meet
they're
them
interested
on
in.
their own turf.
Yeah. And be excited about what they're excited about, even if you're not. Fake it, because we need to do that for our kids. So I see it's
Fake it till you make it.
Yeah. It's 8:38 and we plan 20 minutes of questions if you have any. Are you watching, Roberta? I see a little bit here. Megan was signing off. Oh, that's nice. You like the compliments. Do you want to tell us what's going on are there questions? We can give people time for questions.
Yes.
Christine has a question, I think.
Christine has a question, and there's no other questions in the chat at the moment.
Okay, well then I'll have to give you either I could give you homework and make you do it now, or I could read. Christine first.
Yes, well, it's not much of a question. It's more of a comment. I think that for reading and writing, it's about people sharing their human experience, and that it should be tangible. It should be a book. It should be a pen. It should be a paper and printed for young children that are learning to read, and it should not have anything to do with technology. Technology divides people, right? Like everything is coming down to texting. I have a lot of trouble with texting because there's less, you don't have to give people the time of day. It takes a lot of time to write a letter, whereas you can just text somebody. And then I just think for kids learning how to read with these applications, with the alpha phoneticals, the alphabet stuff, they kind of get lost and they lose the meaning of what reading and writing really is. And we need to give them, and also my daughter, whenever she leaves the house, she brings a book. She also brings the pen and a paper.
Great.
Oh, lovely.
I don't go out without pen and paper, but my friends laugh at me for pen and paper because they're like, you can write it on your phone. But you know what? First of all, you look too young to have a daughter. I thought you were like a teenager. I'm looking at you.
No, I'm 35.
No, you look very good and young. Okay. But wait, what I was
35 is the number of the night. This webinar is brought to you by the number 35.
What I was going to add there, though, Christine, is that I partly agree, but I partly don't, because I'm all for pen and paper. Look, I made my notes the old-fashioned way, but I think this is where people are living now. So when I teach my creative writing class, which I do at Marinopolis, if they want to write a whole story in text, they can do it, all as text messages. There's a beautiful book by Alice Kuipers. It's called, I think it's called Notes on the Fridge Door. I don't know, David. It's all in my bookshelf here somewhere. I have it. The whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's just notes between a girl and her mom, like fridge door notes, you know, like Post-its. So I think, yes, I agree with you that give them the old fashioned stuff as much because of the connection that you're talking about. But I also think there's good things about tech and we got to get comfortable with it too. Like, look.
Yeah, but I'm talking about
Yes.
early childhood. My daughter just turned 6. I
Yeah.
will not have her learn anything on a computer. Everything would have to be pen and paper. And I worked as a special needs attendant, and it's for the special needs kids. Sometimes the iPad is just a way to make things easy for them to disconnect. You be comfortable in your corner, you play your repetitive game. You know what I mean? But when you have that togetherness and the book and the cuddling with that child, that's when you really reach out to them. That's Chloe. She's gonna start reading soon.
There is the love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cute. Yeah, that's it. It's very interesting to hear that perspective. But I think maybe for some kids, it's a blessing to have the, you know, the tech, and kids who like, one of my friend's sons has this thing, I'm trying to remember the word for it, with handwriting, dysgraphia. And again, it was found very late. And when they found it, if he works on a keyboard, he needs to be on a keyboard all the time. And
that's different. Yeah, that's very different. There's exceptions to everything.
Drown the entire new generation in technology. The synapses don't form in the brain.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
As they do with reading and the actual printed letters on a page.
The same thing, like going to the library, learning how to find the book, how to find, you know, the aisle and the number, finding your book, looking for that chapter. It's all very physical and it's a journey. Whereas the virtual world, like for my daughter, she wouldn't be, she can navigate it, but she doesn't understand it. She doesn't understand software platforms.
And there are big retention problems too.
Yeah.
So because your brain hasn't done any work for it.
That's it. So for me, like for early childhood learning, because that's the only thing I can really relate to right now, all hands on, no technology. That would be my way to go, except for the exceptions that you were talking about.
Yeah. But again, I'm like on your side, but I'm also aware of some of the other stuff. Like I know there's kids who are really into coding, right? I'm not. Like I have a little problem on my computer. I could like get hot flashes because of my age. I get on the computer. But I will say there are some people, like little kids that want to code. So what I think is sort of what we're talking about before. If I don't have a kid like that, or I haven't met such a kid, but apparently there are some. So if there was a kid who's super interested in tech or computers or whatever, I say, there's
all power to them.
There's a line from Blake. I love it. Dip him in the water who loves to swim. Dip him in you want to swim, go in water, right? You want to be in the library, go to the library. Like we got to give lots of things to different kids. And I like that Roberta posted it, notes on the fridge door, Alice Kuipers. But I think Kuiper has a U.
Okay, I'll look it up.
No, it's a Dutch name, so I'm Dutch, so I know that it has a U.
And I believe Pam has her hand up.
Okay, let me just unmute. I just wanted to say that the workshop resonated with me tremendously because I was a preschool teacher for 29 years.
Wow.
And my favorite thing to do was story time.
Yeah.
And I had 3 kids. And I read to them every night. We went to the library. They were allowed 6 books each. And I personally walked out of the library with 18 books. And it was such a special time. And my son, who is now 33, was at my house recently. And he said, Mom, when are you going to get rid of all those books? Because I have 2 full crates of picture books that I've saved. And I said to him, I'm not getting rid of them. I'm saving them for your children. And unless I'm moving, I'll find a spot to take them with me, because to me, they were so important. And when I think that today you could hand a child a book and they start going to turn the page, I think it's kind of sad. And that's just my little piece.
Thanks, Pam.
As my friend Alice would say, just the opinion of one.
One of my friends yesterday had an opinion. It was actually, she's my swimming buddy, but Megan's already gone. So she told me her opinion. We talked about it on the way home from the pool. And then she wrote me the funniest message. She said, I disagree with myself. And I just, again, I thought like, and that's the kind of, like, I'm this kind of person. I'll write it down for you. I disagree with myself. I wrote that in my notes because like, I got to use that in a book. Like, it's such a clever thing. And we all have it sometimes, but just do it. That's again, like just caring about language. Oh, do we have time for a wee bit of Pierre for you guys? You have more questions?
Can I just say one last thing is that I am not a writer, but I do stand-up comedy. And so like I have the same kind of thought, ooh, I could use that.
Exactly. That's the same. That's the creative impulse. And to be a comedian is to be a writer, to be so many things. Again, my boyfriend, the scientist, he says to write up like a science paper. He tells his students at McGill, he says, find the story. What's the story about your discovery or your project? Everything has a story.
That's how I became a comedian. I wanted to be a better storyteller.
Great. That's what it's about.
I just want to ask a question. What about comprehension? There are people who seem to be reading, but don't have a lot of comprehension. Do you have anything for that?
I do. You know why? And I taught, what's your name? I don't have a name on the screen.
I'm Lisa. I'm Megan's mother.
I met you in person. I didn't realize it was you. I'd see like the lady. Okay. So Lisa, okay, first of all, we sang your praises. I hope you heard. So I do know about that. You know why I know about it? And I tell this to my students. I know because I had difficulty with that. I remember being in CEGEP and having to read suddenly so much at Marianopolis, where I now teach for so long. And I remember I would spend like the whole afternoon reading. And if someone asked me, what did you just read? I'd be like, I have no friggin' idea what I just read. I read for 3 hours, but I don't know where it went. So I tell my students, you cannot afford to lose 3 hours like that. They have too much work to do. So there are tricks, very basic. It's work, but this is how it goes. First of all, highlighter, which all the kids use, except there are people who highlight every word, the whole paragraph. It's not how it goes. So you have to find and stopping. And I do this, okay? I still do it now because I have to read a lot for my work. And one of the things I do is I review YA books in French, not even my own language, for RadCan during the school year. I'm reading a book a week for that job, right? And some of them are, it's really hard for me. And if I can do it, a person who hadn't read a French book since high school, and I've now been doing this for several years and getting not bad at it. So an old dog can learn new tricks, but I stop after every paragraph, every single paragraph, and go, okay, what just happened? What did I learn? And what did I like about the paragraph? What didn't I like about the paragraph? Another thing I think about as a writer is what can I learn as a writer? You know, that book that I showed you that I loved, which by the way, Lisa, I've been recommending for Megan. I can't lend it to her because I need to do some work on it. But this book too is very like, the language is gorgeous. It's fairly dense in terms of there's a lot going on in the book. You can't read it fast. You know, sometimes you want to, but you have to savor it. So this idea of slow down, ask questions, and you can do it if you're reading to kids, you can do it together. And you can explain this to them. It's a very simple thing to explain, which is don't read too fast and stop and make sure that you're really processing it. That would be my tip. Does anyone else have tips for that? Maybe the parents, David, it looks like you're going to jump in.
I was thinking the graphic, like grown-up picture books or early picture books. The early readers that are picture books, like the Elephant and Piggy books, like Narwhal and Jelly, and then they move on. Percy Jackson himself is dyslexic because he's a demigod, and then they have the graphic novels of those, and that gives you context, which can help a lot with comprehension, it seems to me. That is certainly one of the benefits that have come out of this wave of graphic novels. I don't know what you think about that, Lisa. What do you think?
Well, I was asking, actually, I was asking for a friend, but and I know she's on the conference, so I think that I'm sure she heard all of that and will let us know maybe in 2 weeks if it had any impact.
You know, I remember grade 3, and there was something called, I'm 61, so no, I don't know if you're as old as me, but there was something called, I don't even know what it stood for, SRA. And it was some kind of reading exercise we had to do. And it was the worst, stupidest exercise. I see someone, Pam is nodding, maybe she remembers it too. And
I did it.
It was this big rush, and we were all rushing in the class to read, to be the first one to finish and answer the questions. It was the total opposite of pleasure in reading. And you know what? I remember I cheated because I wanted to be the fastest at SRA. And like, that's the worst. I think back, I was only in grade 3, but for a kid, like, I'm not a dishonest kid. I wasn't.
It was color coded.
Yeah, color coded.
I have a feeling it meant standard reading assessment.
Yeah, probably.
Like that, you know, put everybody in a box.
What a horrible thing. Thank God we don't have that anymore. And we realize how destructive it is. So the whole thing is not to, like, it's what you said before. It's not quantity, it's quality. If you can read the little blurb on a cereal box, or stop and see like an affiche, a poster somewhere, and you want to talk about it or to think about it, or a cartoon, it doesn't matter what it is. It's to really take it in, think critically about it. You know, we need more than ever, we need critical thinking, right? Especially with all the misinformation. This is the new pandemic when we get through the health one.
I like the SRA because the other teacher was so boring. At least here I was independent and I could do it on my own. I liked it.
Okay.
But I just wanted to say, you were talking about graphic books, David, but it made me think of when you ask about comprehension, that's another way to help comprehension is graphic organizers.
Can I pipe in? I wanted to share because my son had dyslexic and other learning disabilities, and my daughter also. And one of the things that they had difficulty with, besides, phonological awareness, was comprehension. And I remember that my son, in the early years at Vanguard School, they had the most amazing books that they got from Scholar's Choice, and I kept ordering them, and it really helped. And I'm talking about in the early grades. And it was fun because you could teach kids anything if you make it fun and playful. So you'd have a sheet in the book that would show a pond. And there'd be a lily pad. Draw 3 frogs on the lily pad. Put your name in the right-hand corner at the top of the page. How many fish do you see? And you had to put the number of fish. It was interactive. It was multisensory for these kids. And it really helped with comprehension because they were reading it and they were, doing the task. So I don't know what those books were called.
I do. They were called Highlight or Highlighter.
Oh my God, they were fabulous. And there was a whole series of them.
I love them. Love them.
Fabulous.
You used to get them once a month.
I'm remembering Highlights too.
Yeah. I don't think we carry them because they go to people. They're individual kind of things.
It's like a subscription.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whatever works.
No, this wasn't a
Whatever works.
subscription. This was from Scholar's Choice, and you could order them. And anyway, they were amazing.
We're showing our age here with highlights. Highlights.
I'll look into it, and I'll have an update for you next.
Good.
Okay.
Next webinar. If I could, I think we're just about done, are we not?
No, because I have just enough time.
Oh,
to
you're going to
read
read, yay.
one little chapter of my favorite book. Okay, I can never stop reading it, and was one of the first books I read to Guy that I told the boyfriend I told you about. He knows it's very, very deep, even for grown-ups. I'll just read you one chapter. Pierre, it's by Maurice Sendak. Do you guys know of him? Because you got to read his stuff. He wrote Where the Wild Things Are, right? And he said it took him, I think he says it took him also like at least 2 years to write a picture book. Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild, and by the way,
he's amazing.
He's the best. And if you ever really have a hard day, a terrible day, and you need to not give up on all of life, Maurice Sendak died a few years ago, and before his death, he knew he was going to die. I guess it was cancer. I can't remember the details. You have to look up the interview that he did on a show, radio show called Fresh Air, and you will, whatever your hard problems are, you will have faith in the beauty of life if you listen to that. It's just the most gorgeous thing. Okay, so just one chapter of my favorite story. To see the pictures too. Okay, first there's a prologue, right? So what I'm doing is modeling what I want you to do, which is love a book and share it and show that you have fun with it, right? So it's easy to do with this one. Prologue. There once was a boy named Pierre who only would say, I don't care. Read his story, my friend, for you'll find in the end that a suitable moral lies there. Chapter 1. Showing you the pictures. All the pictures. Oh, he did the pictures too. It's very rare that we have writers who are also amazing illustrators, but we have them. Marie-Louise Gay is an example in Montreal. So, and again, maybe your kids can do both, or maybe you can help them. When we can talk a bit about that too. And you know what else I was going to say? I'm sorry to add an extra point here, that as parents of kids who with these learning disabilities, you have stories too. You have stories about your experience, and your kids have stories, and we need those stories. It's part of this whole interest now in diverse voices, right? Okay, chapter 1. Then you can all go to bed. One day, his mother said when Pierre climbed out of bed, "Good morning, darling boy. You are my only joy." Pierre said, "I don't care." "What would you like to eat?" "I don't care." "Some lovely cream of wheat?" "I don't care." "Don't sit backwards on your chair." "I don't care." "Or pour syrup in your hair." "I don't care." "You are acting like a clown." "I don't care. And we have to go to town." "I don't care." "Don't you want to come, my dear?" "I don't care." "Would you rather stay right here?" "I don't care." So his mother left him there. That will be enough for tonight's reading. And that completes chapter 1 of this brilliant book, which you got to read it, and you got to read it to your kids. And I honestly, my kids at Marinopolis are 17 and 18, day 1, because it tells you that the most important thing in the whole world is caring. And it doesn't mean it could be any kind of caring about learning, caring about books, caring about other people, just care. And all those teenagers that say, I don't care, because really, if you ask me, this book's about teenagers, not just, I love teenagers, but whatever, the need to care.
Pam, would you like to go ahead? I see your hands up.
Yeah, I just would like if Roberta, you could possibly send all the attendees all the comments that were in the chat.
I would just like to say I've been making notes on a Word document.
Wonderful. And At this point, I would also like to thank Monique and David for a fantastic, just like right up my alley kind of webinar. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I know I'm not the only one, and I am so looking forward to hearing the next one. I'll be here, same station.
Us too. Thank you so much for asking us to do this. Certainly, I've had a great time, and I'm going to do even better next time.
Oh,
maybe I'll have even more words.
Not me. I gave you everything I had this time. I don't know what to come up with next time. I'm gonna have to work hard.
I'm gonna be.
Oh yeah, you made it through all your points.
All my points.
So you get points for that.
But you know what's funny? How, and I know this from teaching on Zoom for the last year and a half. You really, if it goes well, you get energy from the crowd, and even whether it's in the chat, whether it's seeing faces, whether Megan pops by, like her mom. It's you guys. If we did well, it's in large part because of you. So thank you for that.
Well, just remember that there may not have been a lot of people here tonight, but because you have allowed us to record it, many more people will see it. Unfortunately, I think tonight was a very beautiful night, and people just, it's, COVID's eased up a bit and the weather's nice and people just want out. But I am sure that come cocooning time, people will come back and see your webinar, because it's just been outstanding. Thank you so much for all of you who attended, and for Roberta for moderating, and for Monique and David. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks.
2 weeks
Bye,
time,
everybody.
we'll be there.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.